The Frostpunk 2 beta was one of the best beta experiences I've ever had, perhaps only second to Baldur's Gate 3. This positive experience makes me all the more excited for the game's full release on July 25th. Let's dive into what made this so great. One thing I always worry about going into any kind of beta or early access is how well the game will play. How much will it be bogged down by bugs, crashes, lagginess, the things us gamers have pretty much come to expect when playing an incomplete game. Scratch that. The things us gamers have come to expect when playing any game. Being complete is no longer a promise of playing well. So I was pleasantly surprised when I only experienced one small hiccup in my 4 hours of gameplay, a stutter that lasted a few seconds. I was able to move around the map quickly without lag, click around the menus in quick succession, rotate, zoom in and out, pretty much anything that needs to be done in a typical city builder. A near perfect experience in that regard. Two areas that I had high expectations for, based on my experiences with the first Frostpunk game, were graphics and music. Memories of Frostpunk 1 are largely the beauty captured within its unforgiving landscapes and the loneliness of the soundtrack. Frostpunk 2 did not disappoint. It once again encapsulates the majesty and brutality of nature, with detailed maps and music that balances itself between dramatic and subtle, never overstaying its welcome or overwhelming the ambiance of the winds. Simplistic and harsh beauty at its best. But the part I am most excited to talk about are the systems. Frostpunk 2 has gotten some major upgrades in this area, with my favorite being the new council system. In the first Frostpunk, you had opportunities to pass laws, just as you do in the sequel, and you could feel the ramifications of those laws from those that didn't agree. Now you get to feel that even more with the addition of the council. Laws can no longer just be passed because you want them. You have to earn the vote. The council isn't something you start with right away, but you get access to it pretty quickly. Once the building is built, delegates are assigned from the factions inside your city. I'll talk about factions as well. The council meets every 10 weeks to vote on a new law. You will typically get to choose the law you want proposed, but that doesn't mean it's a shoo-in. You'll be shown the likelihood of the law passing based on those who are for, against, and hesitant. You can take the chance and go immediately to voting, or you can negotiate. When you go to negotiate, you will see which factions are actually willing to negotiate with you and which ones aren't, and why they aren't. Negotiations can take the form of providing that faction with the ability to propose the next law to vote on, building a certain type of building for them, repealing a law that's already on the books, etc. You can negotiate for a faction to vote for or against a law. If the law is passed, it goes into effect immediately. Negotiations don't come for free, though. If you do not follow up with your promise to that faction, they will lose their faith in you, and if their relations with you become too strained, that could lead to protests, which lead to disruptions. I absolutely love this new system and how it makes the consequences feel much more widespread and real. Another new system, which I briefly mentioned, is factions. You can start your city with 2 already existing factions. In the beta, you could only choose foragers and machinists. Your standing with the faction starts as neutral. As you continue playing, enacting laws, building new structures, and researching new opportunities, new factions can spring up throughout the city. Some factions will be quite similar in their desires. For example, in my playthrough, a faction called Technocrats rose up, and they were very close to machinists. But I also had a faction called Icebloods form, and they were a bit different from all of the other factions. The decisions you make impact all of the factions, and there isn't a way to please everyone with those decisions. You can increase your relations with factions through a few different ways if things are going south and they are protesting. Protesting impacts the district it occurs in, causing everything to shut down until it disperses. Sometimes you can call them off by funding their projects, granting them the agenda at the next council meeting, or making them a promise. All of these actions increase relations and could be enough of a boost to get them to lay off. You also have the option, once you have enough guards, to forcefully disperse protests. Even the way that the cities are built has been revamped. Instead of going building by building, shelter by shelter, you now primarily build districts, and those districts have their basic buildings already included. So when you build a housing district, for example, you don't need to keep building individual shelters. However, you can build certain special buildings in that district, such as a hothouse, and expand the district to provide more housing. The same goes for other districts. Although this upgrade takes some of the focus off the city building part of the game, I found it to be better organized, easier to use, and it allowed me to focus more on politics and research, which I personally enjoyed. There are so many great additions and tweaks to already existing systems. The only part I wanted to see more done with was the Frostland exploration, which was part of the first game as well. I felt like this could be expanded upon a bit, as it felt very similar to the first game in terms of what it allowed you to do. However, it's possible that the system does include more already, and we just don't have access to it in the beta. I saw quite a few things locked up in the preview model being used, so there may be no disappointments at all when the full game releases. Now that would certainly be a change of pace in the gaming world. There is much more that could be spoken about in regards to upgraded or new systems, but I didn't want to spoil all of them for those who want to go into the game with very little knowledge and discover them for themselves. So I'll leave it at that and plan on a more intricate look at the systems when the full game releases. Overall, a great experience that leaves me anxious for the full game. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, it really helps the channel. Thanks for watching.